Okay. Hello. So, in any event, I think Joe, Frank, and I were going to examine some of the new trend in the evidential problem of evil and the proposal of various types of evil that are immune to um, some number of established theodicies, right? Boston's social evil and Mizrahi's natural inequality are perhaps the, well, two that were, I guess, intuitive enough to me personally to propose something of cruder analogs thereof as the kinds of things I would pose. However, Joe's aware of others, and there are details of the two that he has deemed worth discussing. And we're still waiting for some of the appearance of the other interlocutors and such, but in the meantime, I'll give an account of perhaps how Ms. Rahi's counters or prevents the Iranian Theodicy. So this guests on Phil Papers preprint from St. John's University, forthcoming in Philosophia, Philosophical Quarterly of Israel. There's a sort of unequal distribution of natural endowments as itself something of an evil. So let's get to where this is said to counter or prevent Iranian the Odyssey, and there's also something of a free will defense, right? So okay, first the free will defense says the unequal distribution of natural endowments by attempted a free will defense when it's said to be unfair, but still a moral evil because what counts as winning or losing in the natural lottery is determined by social arrangements. Human societies are arranged in such a way that those who are more innately endowed than others get less of the goods. And then secondarily, the fact that the unequal distribution of natural endowments is unfair is our immoral evil because those who are the losers of such have some kind of free will in their response to their bad luck. So kind of counter to the first point in the social arrangements that I guess, create the valuing or devaluing of those who win or otherwise, is something that limits social interaction. Is microcephalics. And what is this? Tay-Sachs, so a number of others as well. So capacity to socially interact in there. Self, something of a natural endowment. So yeah. So likewise, the response to the God, likewise, is something of a natural endowment. So it's something of a matter of self-reference, such that crops up. Mm. Okay. Plantinga suggests natural evil may be due to the immoral actions of supernatural beings other than the God.
Is that like spiritual warfare?
Like Satan is causing earthquakes or something like that.
Yeah, I find those ideas. Um, I find that when like notions of spiritual warfare are presented to people that are kind of mentally unstable, like schizophrenics, as an example, um, that while the intentions like of the people putting forth spiritual warfare uh, may be well intentioned, I think when you present that like to certain people, it can be a very dangerous idea.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Um, and I personally, I mean, I if I were to really believe that um, that I'm just a pawn in some cosmic game, um, like if I were to really believe that, like it would just be so troubling to me that I'm not sure what I would do.
Mizrahi's response seems to relate to, um, well, first, divine providence, and so that all that occurs in the universe takes place under the God's sovereign guidance and control, citing McCann in 2012. And likewise, since he's making an evidential argument, the well, attributions, lack of demonstrability there creates something of the difficulty of uh, you know giving it any kind of likelihood as an explanation. Okay, from there, Mizrahi moves on to the Iranian Theodicy and such. Describes it as the unequal distribution of natural endowments, although unfair, is necessary insofar as it allows some to care for the naturally unlucky in character forming and soul making ways. So,
Hmm.
Yes, it's arguing that the souls other than those of the afflicted are the ones built.
That kind of reminds me of of a lot of what I've been hearing at the Democratic convention. How the party is basically designed like to care like after those that are less fortunate. Um, uh, like in that uh, like in that work on behalf like of those like who either don't have a voice or don't have like the means to help themselves. That is virtuous, like to engage in that work.
Hmm.
I just find it I find it more coherent, like to just like have an evolutionary point of view about it. I mean, we don't get like to choose the circumstances of our birth.
Well, okay, originally was it kind of way that I argued it was the what is it the was the context of the evil god challenge, and that the evil god, the malevolent god, would have more room to maneuver, where a good god would, in terms of inequality, be limited to the extent which equalization is possible.
Yeah, how I think about it um, is that like either God is like he's either able to do something about the evil in the world and he can't, and so he's not all powerful, or he can and he chooses not to, which he would therefore uh, not be maximally good.
Mm. Well, you've seen. You actually have the link to the paper.
No, I need that.
Okay, here it is. Okay. I don't know if you see it now.
Yes, I'm going through it. Thank you. I do tend to be more interested in holding God accountable for natural evil rather than moral evil.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh, what a distinction. Go ahead.
well, I was going to say that like I remember I was taking a class like on the history of like a disease, and like I was doing a project on anthrax, and I learned that anthrax is a naturally occurring thing, and so um, I think one could argue that as horrible as anthrax is, like if it's naturally occurring, then like it's basically um, like it's designed by God, basically. And there's not a lot of there's not a lot of good that you could say about anthrax, but it is um, like it's naturally occurring, um, and like I don't hear anybody mention that when they're talking about like intelligent design or like how like beautifully balanced everything is in the universe.
Hmm. I think Dawkins, of all people, well, perhaps inadvertently or without capitalizing on it, raised the issue. I think it was the Greatest Show on Earth,
Okay.
section called Evolutionary Theodicy.
Oh, interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, it describes well, various products of evolution that are so terrible, like the Ich-Newman wasp. Ich-Newman wasp, I think, stings what is it, larvae or something of another insect. I think eggs that hatch or it lays within it eat the thing alive.
Oh, right, right. Like they hatch, like, and their food is right there in front of them. Yeah, that's a very twisted example. Yeah, I'm at the part where it's talking about Swinburne's response to the problem of natural evil, and that 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 God has a right to allow uh, natural evil to give us the knowledge to make a range of choices between good and evil, and the opportunity to perform actions of especially valuable kinds. And there's talk about like opportunities to act in a heroic and otherwise morally praiseworthy ways. It goes on to say, let us call this response to the problem of natural evil the character forming or soul making defense. I find this I find this interesting, but I also find it hollow because like I find it necessary to I I find a lot of natural evil like in the forms of like tornadoes and like in tsunamis and things like that. I find them um, like I find the kinds of suffering that they bring to be utterly unnecessary. Like I think that a world could be designed that would allow for opportunities for character building that would not have um, um, like tornadoes and hurricanes and stuff. I mean, like I find that a lot of the destruction that natural evil brings is just like it's utterly meaningless, like all the life that was extinguished, like in the Boxing Day tsunami. The I mean, I don't see there being an argument that loss of life is acceptable if it builds a certain like amount of character, like in the survivors or something like that. And I think it's up to us, like as human beings, to basically try to like protect us uh, from these events. Like we try to like protect ourselves like from natural disasters, and we try to protect ourselves from the spread of like a disease and illness. And it's up to us to do this. Like there's no higher power that is going to intervene and say, well, here's the polio vaccine, like or here's like an early warning system for tsunamis. Like it's up to us to basically deal with this evil.
The character building, takes that as something of a starting point, says that the process of dealing with it and so on builds some kind of character that God would find praiseworthy. So, I'm not sure that per se really speaks to the issue. I mean,
Okay, so you're saying that a part of like of the character building is to please God.
well, perhaps, but when someone responds to these natural evils, that having to respond to them and whatever kind of care is exhibited for the victims of such is kind of character that is sought to be built or right to build. It says something of what is it? Say man versus nature kind of a conflict or
Yeah.
struggle where in the I guess the process of engaging in the struggle builds virtuous character and allows to display the virtue and such, right?
Yeah, it does. And I mean, like I think character forming it can obviously happen in other ways, but I guess the concept of like of soul making um, Like, I guess that is a little better.
Well, they're, I think, synonymous. Character building, soul making.
Okay.
Hmm. It looks like the one of the critical panelists in the discussion may not actually be appearing, so that could be awkward too.
Yeah, I would have liked to have had Joe pop in. Because he's read all of this paper. Is that right?
Oh, he's read this one in Austin Social Evil, and I think has some lines on other ones immune to standard theodicies as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm interested in hearing like about the social evil. That's the first time I've ever heard that used in that way.
Yeah. Okay, I'll give you a link to that paper. I've fixated a bit upon these two because they were, I guess, elaborated upon um, two of my more natural inclinations, if you want to call it that, um, with respect to phrasing the problem of evil, or evidential at least. They're rather substantially greater than what I, you know, extemporaneously posed. However, I was at least hinting at something of the core ideas underpinning them.
I would, I would also be interested in hearing a theist's response. Um, I'm curious if they would acknowledge that um, natural inequality, um, you know, like is a new evidential problem of evil.
I'm not sure they would necessarily grant novelty, but they may find more difficulty with Mizrahi's further development of the analysis. I don't think the idea per se is necessarily so novel. So, in my, for instance, just kind of winging the core ideas is, not some kind of grand insight. However,
Yes.
the additional analysis they've layered on, solidifies the kind of case that can be made from it in ways that show I guess, the inadequacies of the Theodicy's responses as they now stand. Ooh, being tired. Caffeine pill.
So, social evil is an instance of pain or suffering that results from the game theoretic interactions of many individuals. And responsibility for the outcome lies with no particular person and no impersonal force of nature. Rather, it lies with a group of people, each of whom may be morally in the clear. That's interesting.
I don't think I'm seeing anyone who's really capable of contributing.
Yeah, I do need to head off to work here in a couple moments. I've emailed myself those two papers, and I'm going to try to take a moment and go through them at work. I would I would much rather have a conversation about this than like any like of the small talk that was happening earlier.
Hmm. Yeah, small talk's a bit much for me. I really can't handle it. Yeah. I think Joe cited some other cases, like was it Divine Evil and something else. I'm not sure what it's meant by Divine Evil. I think we're four that Joe cited. You can Google around for whatever. Joe said he wanted 30 minutes. I'm not sure how long ago.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to go probably right when he gets here.
Yeah, you both said 30 minutes that are at the same time when you have to leave and when Joe can even show up. Okay, so divine evil, social evil, natural equality. So it says the classic natural and moral evils. Uh, that classical natural and moral evils are um, end up basically being countered by the Theodicies. Divine evil, I'm not sure about. Okay, Jill Gripper Hernandez. Phil Copen, Divine Evil. Moral character, the God of Abraham. Gertz, Divine Evil. Also, moral character is the God of Abraham. There's 3. Herbert McCabe, God, Evil, and Divine Responsibility. Hell, the problem of evil. It's a soteriological problem of evil. I don't see that many citations on many of these. McCabe has at least 4 citations.
I think I'm going to have to read up on the prisoner's dilemma.
Well, also, was it Pareto optimality and Nash equilibria?
Yes, yes. I've heard Nash equilibrium used a bunch, and I have no idea what it is. Is it from John Nash, the mathematician at like at the Rand Corporation?
Nash equilibria? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's the guy.
Okay, that's him. Okay, I'm familiar with a little bit of his other stuff in game theory.
Well, Nash equilibria are pretty fundamental to game theory. And the entire kind of whatever is outcome of the combined optimal strategies and such seem to be characterized by being a Nash equilibrium.
Okay, so in terms of, let's use the example like of the Cold War. If the U.S. and the Soviets are both rational actors, like, and they're kind of playing their Cold War nuclear games, you're saying um, there would be an equilibrium where neither side like is willing to risk everything to get what they want. Is that kind of what it's like?
No, it's kind of like well, and you consider what the worst case is, depending on what everyone else does, and you don't necessarily know what everyone's going to do ahead of time. You kind of rank everything by the worst case of how what everyone else does would make it to be. Um, the best among the choices rated that way is and being chosen for each, I guess, player independently is the Nash equilibrium.
Okay. Okay, and so the two sides in the Cold War ended up in a state of Nash equilibrium where they would not have a benefit
Nah,
changing their strategy.
well, hang on. This is not something that predicts how people would act. It's more of a computer optimization kind of thing, right?
Okay.
The best of all the worst cases that depend on how everyone else acts as a kind of computer programming strategy is basically how want you program the machine to respond. It's so you can do things like program computers to play chess. It's not really something that says how people really behave. So
Okay. I appreciate the distinction.
yeah, it's a big one. It's also not really necessarily the best way to go about things in general. I mean, while there is kind of a worst case of what everyone else would do, and most of the time we actually act on the assumption that, people aren't necessarily going to do the absolutely most miserable making thing to you, or that they'll do things that'll be reasonable for them in some ways, and perhaps not necessarily be motivated to make you the worst off they can. Where Nash equilibrium says, basically bulletproof yourself against them making you the worst off that they can. Right?
Okay.
In a real human scenario, this would be like, pretty much everybody's out to get you. If they're really trying to make you the worst off that they can, or I suppose maybe not trying to, but you're safeguarding yourself against that. They can all be trying to kill and torture you. You pretty much disregard that in a realistic case. You can't really ground any kind of social interaction that way, because, well, if that were really the case and you had to guard against such a broad consensus, so to speak, or commonly aligned set of efforts, you would actually be defenseless, and there would be no real difference, right? You wouldn't get an answer out of it at all, because no matter what you would do, you would lose, right? So these Nash equilibria and such aren't things that really apply to day to day, and part of the interesting little nastiness of neoclassical economics is they actually try to apply it to that day to day, right? And they get wrong answers. They predict behavior that people don't actually do, and then hold people morally responsible for, well, not doing as their, I guess, ridiculous assumptions and model advise, right? The assumption was that people act like that. It's been called rational choice theory. It's got a lot of other problems too.
And people aren't rational all the time.
Well, what they call rationality is acting like these game theory, I guess, optimization algorithms would advise, which I already showed kind of one way that it doesn't really apply to social situations, and another is, of course, well, that kind of calculation is not how people work. They're not trying to, make it as great as possible. I mean, real people have basically what's good enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are all kinds of, limits on trade-offs people will make for juggling various kinds of, you know, things to make good that are
Yeah.
tensions with each other. So it's not like a single goal that it crunches down to a number that you can plug into, Karushkin Tucker or the calculus of variations, right?
Yeah. I think at a certain point, our minds are only able to deal with a certain quantity of uh, factors being weighed, like against themselves. And
Yeah, yeah, but they kind of do a blame the victim on the limited capacity kind of affair. And I think I meant the things that I mentioned were kind of in a little bit of a different direction from limited capacity, was more of a limited desire, even.
okay,
Right? So, instead of trying to, get the absolute most money possible or something, I mean,
I see.
there's enough money to be well off, and, you know, once you've got that, you're pretty much content.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's 6 figures and that's a quote unquote luxury or something, but still.
Yeah, yeah. I think according to a study um, from the people that are doing the World Happiness Index, they have reason to believe that that happiness kind of caps out at around 50,000 a year, and that when you go above that, like the extra money um, isn't really making people any it's not.
No, it's a Laffer curve kind of.
Mhm.
Uh,
Go ahead.
it it might make a little bit of a bump, but it's it the power of it to make people better off trails off, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Like if at the peak of the most happiness per dollar, you know you say it's I don't know, 1 to 1 to 50 grand. Okay, it's not really most happiness per dollar, but still. Um, yeah, after you top out there, you start adding more than like the dollar more is worth less in terms of the happiness comes out of it. So what is it? Diminishing marginal utility of income.
Hmm.
And there are other things like diminishing marginal propensity to consume. So as the power of it to additional claims to resources diminish, or sorry, the powers is additional claims to resources to increase utility, happiness, and so on diminish. The propensity to actually utilize those diminishes too. And you see people just saving more of it, so to speak. leaving it bound up in financial instruments or in the bank.
Yeah.
Right. So somebody with, what is it? However many billions of dollars, it's not going to go using the billions of dollars to lay claim to goods and services. To pretty much just have it, sitting there bound up in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the arguments for progressive taxation. You're going to sort of make proportional or whatever it is more to the amount of happiness you yes, quote unquote, confiscate from people by taxing or whatever. You do less damage in terms of happiness you take away by taking the $1,000,001 away from a billionaire than you do
Yeah.
the $10 from a beggar. Right?
Yes.
Then of course, given that the what is it? I guess social permission, whatever it is, to lay claim to a resource is what is it? Involves the what is it? I guess money or whatever it is. You say, oh well, the transfer to someone who is not going to use it to lay claim to a resource to someone who would greatly benefit. They could lay claim to some additional resources. Makes for some kind of transfer payment. So they got the transfer payments like through social insurance or outright subsidy and so on too. Yeah. It's kind of the reformist model.
Mm-hmm.
There's ultimately a kind of transfer that goes in play, even if not by some kind of fiat or similar. I mean, just having to exchange, carries out a transfer to begin with, right? So whether it's by dint of exchange or by dint of the dictate, right? You have the class of those who are the rentiers who collect what they do by dint of some kind of ownership claim, and those who, I suppose, do so in labor, salary or wages, whatever. And whether it's the just kind of proclamation. And welcome, Joe. We're
Hey, how's it
trying to
going?
touch on natural inequality and social evil. Not familiar with divine evil, but yeah, whether there's that kind of additional dictate from the government or not, or it's just kind of part of that exchange negotiation. I mean, ultimately, the same kind of set of transfers goes on, right? There's so much that so many claims, latent claims that get transferred to that working class get actualized, and some latent claims that get transferred to the rentier class. Well, I suppose maybe somewhat actualized, but the rentier class tends not to actualize most of their latent claims. So, yeah, I guess we ended up with kind of economic inequality and something relating to the natural inequality, but we touched on, I suppose, sort of free will defense and Iranian theodicies.
You guys already
Um,
covered it all?
well, not necessarily great detail, but
Okay.
probably explored less the social evil from Poston. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, like, it's just an interesting. I read on Philosophical Disquisitions, which is an awesome website. Just that's where I found divine evil, which I'm not really too familiar with. I know that a form of divine evil is just talking about the evil that is hell. It would be an evil thing for hell to exist. But divine evil, social evil, and this natural inequality, they're all types of evils that have propped up recently. The trend is not so much to just go at different angles from the different theodicies against the problem of evil. The trend is to highlight specific types of evil that the theodicies can't handle. And
Okay.
Mizrahi, his argument is that natural inequality is something that is evil because it's unfair, not because it's it perpetuates any type of pain or suffering. Although a lot of these evils could perpetuate pain and suffering. And that's kind of the interesting thing with these arguments, is that you could still talk about the same types of evil, like the evil of, children being born with Tay-Sachs disease, and or some people being born mentally disabled, all that kind of stuff. These are evils that are often brought up. But the thing with natural inequality, is that it's pointing to a different form of evil that cannot be addressed by these theodicies, which is the fact that it's unfair, that these people were born in such a way, whereas others were not born in such a way. And
Yeah.
because that's unfair, the free will defense and the soul-making theodicy doesn't cover them. What were you going to say, Frank?
Oh, well, I agree with you, and I think how we are made to value fairness. I'm sure you've seen the video like of the monkeys, where
Yeah,
one of them is given grapes and the other one is given like a cucumber or something.
yeah,
Like, and
yeah,
so all of us are born into this world, um, uh, unable to choose the circumstances of our birth, and we can see, like as children, we can see how it's not fair. Um, and as we grow up, we kind of cultivate valuing fairness, and so I guess that's my comment.
yeah. And if you think of an interesting thing in the article, is it doesn't say this, but in relation to the point you just made, um, the theodicies kind of require some sort of fairness in order for them to get past this argument. Like, it should be the case that access to what are called soul-making opportunities
Hmm.
shouldn't be so unfairly distributed. Why is it the case that an infant with Tay-Sachs only has access to so many soul-making theodicies, whereas someone who lives the average life of 70 years has access to a lot more soul-making opportunities in order to, make their soul just perfect in the Aranean way,
Okay.
right?
And so
So, oh, go ahead.
is the soul making done by those that have the means to help and assist others?
It depends, like on which type of praiseworthy attributes you focus on. But usually it's kind of the case like giving to charity or showing humility or those kinds of things. Like in the face of these evils, we're able to build these good characteristics, right?
Okay.
But it through no fault of their own and through some what Mizrahi refers to the entire time is what's called the natural lottery. I believe it's a John Rawls concept where people are just they're handed they're handed a ticket in life, and the lottery either endows them naturally with like good cognitive abilities or
Mhm.
longevity in life,
Mhm.
or you're born like mentally challenged or something. Um, and so it's the case that if this is arbitrary from a moral perspective, it seems like it's unfair that some people are born with natural endowments, which is already unfair. But not only that, as a consequence of being born with these natural endowments, they have more access to soul making opportunities, which makes it more, they're more apt to build their soul in the way that the soul making theodicy suggests or hopes that we would build our soul.
Okay. Because
It seems unfair, and because it's unfair, not because it's pain or suffering, that's why it's considered
Well,
evil.
what is fairness?
Um, well,
I think a
access to
mathematical
the
term.
resources, like I mentioned earlier, John Rawls is discussed, and John Rawls has views on having access to different positions in office or different different goods and stuff in life, having fair access to that in
Mm.
that sense. And like I mentioned earlier, it's implied that there's some sort of fair or unfair access to um, either natural endowments or soul making opportunities in both the free will defense and the soul making theodicy. And that fairness is not met. And because of that, it's an evil.
Well, I think there is some kind of was it notion of fairness? I think was it Kagan floats in a kind of discrepancy between outcome and desert, where then what is deserved can, I guess, be challenged as perhaps I don't know, whatever the dictate of their god is.
Are you talking about Shelley Kagan?
Yes.
Shelley Kagan talked about. Are you talking about his views on Rawlsian contractarianism that he gave in the debate with Craig?
No. But yeah, I mean, the contractarianism might be contrary kind of, I guess, assessment of fairness and desert from, I suppose, what the theist would posit.
Now, think about, well, in that debate, he presents the idea, the veil of ignorance. And he presents the idea of imagining yourself as a souped up, rational being. How would that being decide things behind the veil of ignorance? And it's through that where we can figure out, um, like, some sort of at least non-meta ethical, some sort of moral framework in which to live our lives. But the thing is, the souped up rational being, I imagine, would be God. And so when you think, how would such a being decide certain things, um, you would think that that being would make it so this problem of natural inequality would not arise. But that's the thing, this problem natural inequality has been like evident, especially in the article. So it seems like if there is like a being that's posited as being like a souped up fair individual, that being is clearly not evident when we look at the unequal distribution of natural endowments in the world. Right?
Well, yeah, and oh, well, looks like Frank took off. But yeah, if you know people who are, I guess, prepared to have discussions in depth, probably be good to a little bit along those ways, because you know, I guess the derail and
Yeah.
off topic and small talk has gotten a bit much for me.
But a lot of emphasis on race realism lately. But I think that that's a summer thing. So maybe one more month of it.
A summer thing? How's that?
Yeah, like a younger person type thing. People who are younger have more time in the summer, and so that's why in the summer the people who have these types of obnoxious racist views have been more frequently coming into the room. Right?
Well, yeah, well, I guess we don't need to, I guess, repeat their pollution. The hope, I guess, is that where there might be kind of meta-ethical challenge to, I guess, the notion of fairness is, well, I guess I foresee
Are
some
you
kind of answer not addressed in the papers. Go ahead.
are you think that the best avenue for theists to take is to challenge the concept of fairness?
Yeah.
Right? The one of the things he does address is the idea that how can we argue that God owes us anything, right? What's the and this is actually an argument I see just a lot of people giving anyways to the problem of evil. Like, how is God obligated to tell us anything? This is like one of the more extreme Christian type answers that we get here on Google Plus. And his response, Mizrahi's response is, let's see if I actually took notes on it. Like, one of the things he responds about is that this can be subject to a Euthyphro-like dilemma. Is God just because he says so, or is God just because the things he does are just? It's independent of God, right? Because to say that God doesn't owe us anything, or who are we to say that God is obligated to us, is akin to saying that the principles of justice are to God's will. They speak to God's will, and that's where the Euthyphro-like dilemma comes in. And the other thing is, it seems in general that would miss the point of the argument of natural inequality. And he argues that the problem is not that some people get more than they deserve. The problem is more that some people get much more than other people, which isn't fair because the quote winners in the lotto do not deserve to win, and the quote losers in the lotto do not deserve to lose. And I just have a quote. Usually when I'm nearing the end of taking notes on a paper, I just end up having a lot more quotes. And so this quote is, if God is morally perfect, all good and just, then this sort of unfairness is a problem, not because God owes us anything, but because it is not fair that some people have all the luck and some people just get nothing but crap. I don't know if I think that just speaking to the fact that it's unfair, you could still talk about like some sort of natural lottery. It's not necessarily speaking to what God owes us, but if they get to that point, you could say it seems to me like some unfairness would be negated by the existence of a morally perfect, all good and just being, right?
Well, and there is this, I think, that they don't deserve to win and don't deserve to lose, but the deserving to win and lose is perhaps unclear or in need of justification.
What's the thing that he keeps on saying this over and over again?
Saying what again?
Well, he keeps on saying something that I wrote down that would answer that, I suppose.
I suppose it's not just inequality per se, but injustice. So I guess to the extent that there is not injustice, there would be, I guess, posited a perfectly just world. So might run contrary to their own premises otherwise. Uh-oh. Hello.
Oh, what just happened? I have my bandwidth down.
There you go. Yeah. I think without injustice in the world, I mean, there would be positing something of a perfect world as it stands, which I think at least demands perhaps some additional premise. What is it? Well, the world is not perfect as it is.
You think that the argument requires, like, you think that that premise needs to be justified, that the world is imperfect as it is? It seems to me like the people who are running the free will defense or the soul-making theodicy are conceding that point, right? Maybe not the free will defense,
Sure.
maybe the free will defense with respect to the evidential problem. They're conceding that point, right?
Yeah, I think so, but even if so, I mean, may need to be taken on board as a premise.
Mm. Yeah, I think that, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out, like, yeah, if anyone says, well, how do you know it's unfair? And it's like, well, why would you even run? What's the point of running the soul-making theodicy if you aren't already conceding that it's unfair? Because it seems like, if anything, unfairness would be one of the things that maybe the soul-making theodicy would posit as something that could, build a nice character or build a great soul. But the issue is the unfair distribution of natural endowments results in a unfair access to soul-making opportunities. And as a consequence, some people are more likely or have more access to building their soul or character building than others. And that's the issue, right?
Some of it. I think there is, well, some potential, I think, for the claim that while there is some amount of inequality and injustice, injustice may not pertain to the inequality of those soul building opportunities, and maybe that the or the assignment of desert is, well, unequal, and I suppose maybe it's self-deserved. I don't know.
Well, how can you say that, being bored with Tay-Sachs? In fact, it's any type of someone deserving is kind of, I think that's negated by the natural lottery that Mizrahi appeals to. It's just arbitrary from a moral perspective who is more endowed naturally than others.
Yeah, they may not. No, they may not say that it's on the basis of what is it? Someone's action, maybe that it's deserved by dint of what is it? I guess the say soul created at the beginning of time has some kind of character there, and that the character within the soul that needs to be expressed is what renders it deserving of the opportunities to build the soul, so to speak.
Are you
So,
saying, I'm sorry,
yeah.
Things that are already within the soul require, or what? Are you saying that someone would argue that maybe it's the case that before we're even instantiated in this world, our souls possess certain characteristics that that guide whether or not we are naturally endowed? Like, that could be an
Yeah,
argument.
yeah.
Well,
The
the
vessels of
issue,
wrath made for destruction. Romans
yeah,
9:22.
oh, okay. The thing that what there are responses to that, but the response to that I like is Mizrahi mentions, look, this is an evidential problem of evil that could be logically possible. It could even be metaphysically possible, but how likely is it? And right, like, so how can you show that that's more likely the case than not? There's no evidence of an afterlife, let alone a before life, right?
They'll cite scripture as evidence. Yeah.
But I mean, it seems tenuous already. someone else could cite scripture from some other monotheistic belief that probably contradicts it. And like I said, because it's evidential, you don't have to, even if it's logical or metaphysically possible, it's not enough. But he still kind of responds to it. He still kind of said it sounds not the specific point you made, but similar points. But it sounds to me as though the response he would give is that's how is it the case? It seems like there's just another type of lottery happening. How is it that our souls, before we're instantiated, were endowed with such characteristics that would allow us to be endowed with such natural characteristics, right? It seems like you're kind of just pushing the problem back. If it's logically possible or metaphysically possible that souls can be endowed with certain characteristics, then why is it not logically or metaphysically possible that there's some sort of supernatural lottery that occurred to allow these souls to be so endowed? And why is it not the case that we can't just say that seems unfair? It's supernatural inequality, right?
Right. And then, I think they might try to cut that off at the pass, but that, given that it's the god constructing the game, at least entirely in terms of souls, there's no. It's only sort of in the natural realm, and by dint of the imago Dei, that humans
By dint
have
of the
some kind
what?
of
I'm sorry?
imago Dei, that humans have co-creator status. It's in the supernatural realm. It's entirely the god going on saying, thou shalt be a bishop, and thou shalt be a rook, and thou a knight.
I think the other thing that Mizrahi would mention is that the issue is unfairness in this world. So you can account for maybe why. Well, it doesn't really seem like the natural lottery is arbitrary in terms of morality. So it seems like the whole point of the argument is missed again. But whatever happens is it results in an unfair distribution of natural endowments in this world. And it's because of that inequality that there's a type of evil, right?
Yeah. I mean, at the point, I think it does take a different kind of step back from just, a sort of regression on lotteries. Similar, I think, at that point, I think one might question instead, well, I guess the sort of system where, not only are some made, bishops, rooks, or knights, but how various pieces are sacrificed in terms of their, I guess, resulting natural outcomes.
It sounds like you're ultimately going for the Swinburne theodicy, that you'll have like a rook or knight sacrifice itself in order to get a queen, or in order to actually put the king in check or even checkmate. It sounds like you're gonna have a small evil in order to have a greater good, to meet a greater goal, like getting checkmate, for example. Now, I'm just not sure if that. It seems like this is just it's a perpetuating issue. It's always going to be the case that this unnatural, I mean, not unnatural, that this natural lottery is always going to be occurring. So I'm not sure I'm not sure if it's possible to say that something that's always going to be continuous, certainly continuous on the perspective of a theist, right? How that somehow will be like equaled out. Like, do you think that it's like some sort of divine checkbook balancing, or do you think that it all will be dwarfed by the overall good that comes about from this seemingly perpetual uh, unequal lottery?
I cut out, actually.
Oh, okay.
Could you repeat the, I guess, last sentence or so?
I think I'm just going down a road that's not really that good. I think that the response to that is it's not. It seems like that would be an argument against a problem of evil that's only dealing with pain and suffering. But the whole issue is that it's unfair. So it seems like you could say, okay, well, this child having Tay-Sachs and dying before it even, reaches like 5, allows for some family to become closer, and as a consequence they have a more loving relationship. But it's unfair that that child was the lotto made it so that child was born with this disease. It's unfair that that child had to be less naturally endowed, if you will. And it's also unfair that that was just so a family can come closer together, right?
Yeah, and
so like, let's look at the chess example, right? Sure, the rook sacrificed itself to allow for the queen to be taken on the other side, but it seems unfair that that rook was assigned the moves of a rook and assigned just the place, like, the rank that it has, in order to allow it just to be something that could be sacrificed in such a move. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The emphasis is on unfairness and supposed to be suffering per se. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I mean, I did have leanings along both these papers' lines. That is, this rise natural inequality. I guess I phrased it as like, right, it may have been inequality or injustice, and or both, and also the what is it? Well, I guess originally it's being put into some kind of competition set against each other kind of situation, and that dives into Austin's social evil.
Yeah, I was gonna say that
The
that seems to me like it would be. Oh, go on. What were you gonna say?
well, yeah, the natural evil already seems difficult to account for as it stands. How is I guess somehow falling out of that dichotomy of moral and natural evil a benefit beyond or to the argumentation, that is, beyond just natural evil per se.
Well, the issue is, um, like a lot of these theodicies do only, I mean, they seem to only focus on the pain and suffering that comes from either a natural or moral evil, but the theodicies don't seem to work on something that isn't from either of them or isn't related to pain and suffering. So with social evils, it seems like, look, when we think of moral evil, we think of the actions of Stalin or Hitler or that kind of thing. We think of the cruelty of someone torturing other people, that kind of stuff. We think of actions that are immoral for an agent to perform, which as a consequence results in pain and suffering. And with natural evils, we think of tsunamis and everything, things that are beyond our control, that are at the whims of natural forces causing evils. Now, you can say that you can use Swinburne's theodicy, you know, evil now will result in a lot of good later. Maybe you can use, you can use theodicies like that, but they don't really work so well when you think, well, social evil, it's not because these what's his name, ego got me saying actors, it's not that these agents are themselves performing immoral things. So their immorality isn't what's causing the evil, but it's also not that it's any type of natural thing that's causing the evil. Instead, it's their collective action that's resulting in the evil. Now, it seems it's a lot easier with natural inequality, right?
Easier to what?
It's a lot easier to undermine the theodicy, the Swinburne theodicy that I brought up. But I'm trying to figure out how social evil undermines it. Because it still is the case that social evil it's an evil, but such a evil now could result in more good later. It seems like social evil actually can't really address the doesn't really put a dent into Swinburne's theodicy. The little bit of evil now results in a lot of good later. But certainly natural inequality puts a dent into it, because it's unfair that some people just are going to have to be the sacrifice in order to allow for a lot of good later.
Well, given that there's question of evidence, how would any kind of evidence be given for that?
Evidence given for what exactly?
That it would result in more good ultimately.
I mean, that's the other thing. It's logically possible that could be the case. But like you said, what's the evidence of that? Until that, I mean, it almost seems like it seems like it's almost becoming skeptical theism, right? Like we don't know if God has, we don't know what God's good reasons are for allowing such evils. It seems like it's a bit more concrete, but it still kind of ultimately falls into the same trap.
Yeah.
So, is there another hangout? Because
this is one in parallel. Because I was a bit turned off by the derailing and off topic, small talk, and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I guess I don't know. It seems like Ludic. I think there's another hangout, and that one's a bit easier to get into. I guess I should also say that's a Rats Meek and Psycho. The Theodicy is Swinburne's Theodicy. It's Richard Swinburne. I'm not sure if he's the one who originated it, but it's a classic theodicy against the problem of evil. It's like, something like a car accident might actually make a family come closer together. So something that we would see as evil, it might be the case that that evil makes for greater good. I'm not sure how far behind the chat is, though.
Yeah. Another idea might be to combine these. I mean, to the extent that the natural evils might have some kind of the Odyssey there. I mean, getting the kind of unattributability to nature or some such, and for that matter, to moral, may be worthwhile. I mean, could some kind of inequality as this kind of game theoretic outcome be, in some respects, a more powerful combined evidential problem of evil?
Yeah, I mean, the example, like what Swinburne says is that in the most powerful, this argument, the problem of evil, and it has its most powerful form in examples. And so it's kind of a depressing, task to find new examples for this argument. But one of the examples for this argument is an example of social evil that I've discovered, which is in some South American beach resort. At a beach, there were a bunch of tourists who found a baby dolphin. And instead of putting the baby dolphin back into the water, they all passed around this baby dolphin, taking selfies of them with the baby dolphin until the dolphin dehydrated and died. And this seems like an example of social evil in that, individually, they weren't acting immorally. They were all thinking, I'm just going to, take a picture with this dolphin, and I'm sure this dolphin's going to swim away. I don't think any of them, or at least the majority of them, weren't acting with the purpose of just having this dolphin die. But the dolphin did die, and the dolphin did go through pain and suffering as a consequence of the collective action of all these tourists. And so I think that that's an example that would utilize this different type of problem of evil. I guess a lot of people really wanted into this hangout.
Oh. Well. Yeah, I was kind of hoping more for those who are philosophically prepared. I don't know if those who are asking are those who actually are. Yeah, conversation too deep or they would join. That's kind of the issue.
It seems like Ludic, yeah, the Swinburne Theodicy. I call it that because that's the last time I remember it being referenced. But like I said, it doesn't seem like it's at all original to him. He's probably just the first person to lay it out in the formal argument against the problem of evil. And I think a good thing from the Mizrahi article to point out is a lot of the theodicies that people throw out there are answers that are theodicies that would be fine against the logical problem of evil, but this is the evidential problem of evil, or at least I've been talking about the evidential problem of evil. And if it's the evidential problem of evil, it's not enough to show that something is logically possible. You also have to show that something is likely to be the case. It's more probable. That's because it's an inductive argument. Whereas if I was just running the logical problem of evil, all you have to do is show that something is logically possible.
Yeah.
So, like things like the afterlife, or theodicy, like things we'll get everything back in the afterlife. A lot of times, those things are argued back and forth, but they're not really shut down for just simply saying you have to demonstrate that the afterlife is likely, and so far that hasn't been demonstrated. That's a separate argument that needs to be given, and that argument hasn't been proffered. Whereas a lot of times we go back and forth like there's no such thing as the afterlife, blah 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 blah. Or a lot of times it's taken as forceful. But I think if you point out that it's only a logical possibility, that's something that would go against the logical problem of evil, but again, it wouldn't go against the evidential problem of evil.
Yeah. So, what is it? So, what I see of Swinburne is, what is it? The division into moral and natural evil, utilizing free will against moral, and soul building against natural. So, yeah, challenging that dichotomy, number one. Breaks the classification scheme, and the what is it, soul building kind of affair is, I think, natural inequality particular handles a great deal. So in some respects these look like, Mizrahi's looks heavily oriented toward responding to Swinburne. Did you say so?
Yeah, I think that, yeah. It seems like it's a good response against anything, even the free will thing, which is something that is an issue, because I think that, especially in front of a wider audience, people are more hesitant to just flat out go, well, I don't think that the type of free will that Swinburne or someone like Craig or other theists appeal to, I don't think that free will exists. It seems like people are more hesitant to go at these things from that angle. So it's nice to have this natural inequality, which doesn't. It seems like Mizrahi's natural inequality appeals to something that doesn't seem like there would be free will. The natural lottery, for example. That sounds like a deterministic perspective, but it doesn't explicitly argue against free will. Certainly not against compatibilist free will, although it might argue against libertarian free will.
It evades the sort of impact of agency on the entire discussion. And I think a social evil likewise does a different kind of circumventing of the question of agency too. So in a lot of respects, it's seems to center around the role of human agency. And something of a defense in depth, one could, flat out just challenge of one free will.
Yeah, that seems like that's kind of the Pal Talkers approach, just to challenge the concept of free will, because it is the case that a lot of the other arguments used require not only just free will, but libertarian free will. I had an example. Like, even the soul-making theodicy, when John Hick kind of revamped it from the Irenaean version, there was a lot of emphasis on our free will. Like, God had to be, I think it was, epistemically distant from us so that her influence would not jeopardize our free will. We wouldn't just do whatever, knowing that God exists, we wouldn't look at her actions and then base how we reacted to these soul-making opportunities in a way that we figured God would want us to react to them. So free will is actually very important to the soul-making theodicy, at least if they're saying that they're taking it from Hick, from John Hick, right?
Yeah. And I think there's, there are some other latent respects in which the defense in depth has premises, theodicies to challenge.
I know, maybe I should.
Go
ahead.
Oh, well, one is to the respect in which there's unfairness or the fall or similar. I mean, the God's relation to that is Euthyphro dilemma. Looks like kind of a sort of Damocles. You have to dance around to keep it from hitting them in the head. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it's actually kind of bugging me that I don't know the social evil response to the Swinburne theodicy, which is just forever reminding me that I've never finished a social evil article.
Well, so, the whole thing is just an immediate response to the structure of Swinburne's theodicy and just immediately dividing it into moral and natural evils. Right? So mean,
Is it really?
Swinburne divides it up into free will against moral and soul making against natural. So,
Yeah.
I mean, undercutting that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I get what you're saying. You can't appeal to either of those because it's not natural or moral
Right.
evil. Mm. Yeah. Let me see if I
Yeah.
even have the art. Yeah.
Well, the introduction to Swinburne's paper, to paper is immediately about Swinburne.
Poston's paper.
Yeah.
He also wrote a very good objection to fine tuning, by the way.
Oh,
Which
excellent.
I need to read. Let me see if I can find it, and I'll post it. Yeah, it's hold on. I'm actually gonna head out because I need to go get food.
Okay.
But I will before I do, I'll give you this article by post.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. Things like this, albeit with maybe more panelists who, what
Yeah.
would you call it, are prepared, able, can happen too. Good.
Yeah, I think if you just a bit more time, right, beforehand, I think a lot more people would probably come in, especially a lot more people familiar with this kind of stuff, and maybe even, you know, like putting out an event with links to the papers and stuff. That's always good. And
Yeah.
you can have it coupled with your normal type of hangouts that people enjoy as well. That might be good. I'll also post the article I just mentioned in the live chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll probably go off air after you take off.
All right. I'll probably be back once I'm done eating. So take care, Nadia.
Okay. Have a good day. Well, that looks like a wrap for this discussion. Um, it's good seeing you all on. Yeah, I wasn't asleep at the well. I was trying to keep it on a certain level. Hmm. Maybe, maybe I went too far. Who knows?